Hello, hello. It's Kate Coastal. I am just setting up our live stream. We're going to get started shortly talking about the quiz that we posted last week, and we're going to go through some of the answers. We'll go through each question, and then we'll talk about why I had the right answer set up as the way that it was and why it didn't quite work for one of the questions the way that I wanted to. So I'll just wait to get a few people here. If not, I'll talk to myself and record it anyway. If you have other questions or comments on the questions, down here, it might be on this side for you. There's the discussion, or maybe it's below. You can send in comments, and then I'll try and look through them before we wrap up. They're doing some filming in my office, so if you hear stuff happening, then that's what's going on. So I told them to keep it a little bit quieter. Let's see, we've got a few people here. That's awesome. If you can let me know or say hi in the comment section, that would be great. I haven't figured out how to look at multiple screens on here at once. I'm just going to make sure that I'm seeing where comments are going. If someone can help me test that out by making some comments, that would be helpful. Just looking to see if I can figure out how to look at a few things on here. But it might be working now. I'm not totally sure. Okay, got about 8 people here. I'm still trying to figure out how I can look at your comments. Normally I have someone helping me with this, but I'm rocking this solo today, so I'll try and look for comments afterwards. And everything's a little bit delayed. Okay, so let's jump into these quiz questions. We'll go through what they were. So the first question on the quiz was about night flying, and it was asking what's required to fly at night. And this one came up in a couple of conversations that I've had with folks. They're saying that they want to fly at night, and that's why they're getting their advanced certificate. And it's like, well, actually, you only need your basic certification. There's no requirement to have anything more than a basic certificate to be able to fly at night. The requirement is that you have to have proper lighting, proper position lighting. And there's been quite a bit of discussion about what that means. And there isn't anything that spells out exactly like you have to have this type of lighting, it has to be this color, and it has to be this many lumens or anything like that. So position lighting typically, if you look at other aviation materials, position lighting or navigation lighting are kind of interchangeable. So that would be something that's a solid light. It's not flashing. Those would be more like an anti-collision light. And it's so that you can tell a position or how the aircraft is navigating. And I think Transport Canada was intentionally vague in saying what that means so that you have the opportunity to pick and choose the lighting that makes sense for the aircraft that you're operating. On like a fixed wing drone, it might make sense to follow the standard red, green, white lights that you would see on like a manned aircraft, manned fixed wing. But for a multi-rotor, that may be insufficient because it might not be enough to help you determine orientation of the drone. So you might want to put some other lights on it, or there might be enough on it as it is in like a stock format. So if not, then there are some LED light kits that are really lightweight that you can get off Amazon. A few of our flight reviewers were discussing this, and there was quite a few options that were out there that they found that worked for them. So position lighting, just to recap, is typically a solid light, though flashing lights can be also really good to deter wildlife, deter birds. And it's as it's needed for you to be able to tell the position of the drone. So either basic or advanced, that's fine. Hopefully no questions on that one. The next question, question 2, is about bystanders. And this is one that we get quite often. And it's a bit tricky because there isn't a place where Transport Canada has defined bystander or people when it's referring to flights near people or what your aircraft is safety assured for. So it does require a bit of interpretation and kind of understanding and discussions, but I can't like point you to a resource where it spells all this stuff out. This has come from talking to different TC inspectors. So when we're talking about people, flying near people, we're talking about people that aren't protected, or bystanders that aren't protected by a roof, basically. If they're inside a building or inside a car that has a roof, then those things are, they won't be considered bystanders. So that kind of plays into question 3 as well. Flights over highways, are they prohibited, true or false? Or flights over highways are prohibited, true or false? And it's false. You can fly over a highway. You just have to make sure that the bystanders that you're flying, if you're flying directly over them, that they are protected with a roof. So cyclists, motorcycles, pedestrians, that kind of thing you have to still watch out for. But if they're protected with a roof, or you're staying your 100 feet or 16 feet away from them, depending on what your drone's safety assured for, then it's totally fine for you to overfly. No problem at all with that. What was the next one? Bystanders. So this question specifically, the people you need to stay 30 meters away from with a basic certification. The options were yourself and your crew, and that's not required. You can fly as close to yourself and your crew as you think is safe. Workers on the job site. This one is a little bit tricky, but if you are flying over something where there's like construction workers on site or film crew or something like that, you can overfly them, but they shouldn't be surprised by the drone. They should know that this is taking place. Their first indication that there's a drone on site shouldn't be the fact that it's over top of their heads or next to them. So if it's something like a construction site, make that part of the morning safety briefing or whatever the operations are like on that site, so that they understand there's going to be a drone and they have the opportunity to remove themselves from that situation if they don't want to be there while the drone's flying. So that one's okay. People in cars on the highway, they are not considered bystanders, like we just talked about with question 3 too. Pedestrians on the sidewalk, there's your right answer. So if they are not covered by something, then they're not protected, they're considered bystanders. And I just think it's funny because the way that TC phrases it, they're not bystanders, they don't call them bystanders, they call them just people. So people who are inside buildings aren't people anymore. If they're inside of a car with a roof, they're not people anymore. It just means you don't have to stay 30 meters away, or yeah, 30 meters away. Question 4 was about flight reviews. So if you don't meet a flight review skill, so these are for the advanced pilots out there, if you don't meet a flight review skill or knowledge requirement, your reviewer can turn it into a training session and retest you on the trained skills or knowledge a few hours later, true or false. And that one is false. If you fail one of the flight review required items, then the earliest that you can retest is 24 hours later. So if there's something being offered, it sounds great and it would be lovely to be able to do this, but doesn't quite achieve the goals of the flight review. If you sign up for something and it says you're guaranteed pass of your flight review, it's like, maybe something fishy's going on. It should be something where you're being tested. It's not a teaching environment. You get tested on items. If you fail it, it's like, thanks for coming in. Here's the things that you should have a thorough debrief. This is why you can't continue on with flight review as is. These are the things you can go home and work on, and then come back at least 24 hours later, and then you can retest. And it's on the reviewer at that point to submit those results. That's part of what we've agreed to do. So, but don't feel bad. Like, it happens fairly often. Well, not fairly often. It happens where people will come in and they forgot their site survey, or don't have emergency procedures, or have run into some issue that they weren't prepped properly. Maybe they're stressed out, didn't bring something. That's okay. That's fine. Just you have to end the review. The flight reviewer has to submit those results, call it a failed flight review, but it's not like that lasts on your permanent record or anything. You don't get like a black flag in the industry. It's not the end of the world. You just come back 24 hours later and you start over again. So they can turn it into a training session in the way that they could still provide some guidance on the failed items, or even on what's to come, but you're not going to see the rest of the review and be able to pass from that point. I hope that kind of clarifies. Hope that makes sense. Next question, question 5, was about safety assurance categories. And so it says, you're an advanced certified pilot with a DJI Phantom 3. Can you fly in controlled airspace? So you're an advanced pilot, great. We know that advanced pilots can fly in controlled airspace. But the other piece of that is that the drone has to be safety assured for operations in that environment, which the DJI Phantom 3 is not. So if you click that hint link, it takes you to the TC website for choosing your own drone, or choosing the right drone for you. And on there, if you search for DJI or you search Phantom 3, you'll see that it's not listed. It doesn't have any tick boxes for controlled airspace near people or over people. So not something that you're allowed to do. I think the Phantom 4 Advanced is the first, kind of the oldest model of Phantom that's allowed in controlled airspace. So it's important to look at that. One other kind of way that I've seen people look at this incorrectly is they say, yeah, I'm a basic certified pilot, but my drone's certified for flying in controlled airspace, so I'm good to go. But it's more like your advanced certification unlocks your ability to use the drone for all of the safety assurance that it's been declared for. So you need both pieces for it to be something that, that allows you to operate in those environments. Hope that made sense. The next one is the sub 250 gram drones. I'm just going to pause for a second. I can see that there's 10 people here, and I get little notifications when people that I know have joined. But if you can try sending in comments if you haven't already, so that I know who's here, and also so I can see that the comment section is working. If not, I'll try and dig it up afterwards. But so far, I just see that I've got some friends in here. Hey, Len, Sean, Andrew, Lucas. Thanks for being here. Okay, so question 6 is sub 250 gram drones. This one, oh, hey, John, thank you for sending a note. Nice to know that I can't see the comments. I appreciate that. And feel free to jump in there and put in more comments. If there's something that I say that you want more clarification on, or that you have questions about, kind of taking it a step further, let me know in the comments. And now that I know that I can see them, I will make sure that I answer them. Sup, Lucas? Hi, Kurt. Hi from Vancouver. Okay, so question 6, sub 250 gram drones. So finish the sentence, drones under 250 grams. Yeah, thanks for not being loud down the hall, Lucas. I appreciate that. Drones under 250 grams are not unregulated. They must still follow the applicable Part 9 regulations. That's the correct answer. They don't require certification to fly, and they can't be flown anywhere. There's more flexibility with where they can be flown without, because they're under 250 grams, but there still are some restrictions. And I just put up a new blog post that I will grab a link to and drop in the comment section shortly, that talks about what you can do with a Mavic Mini, because that's kind of what everyone's thinking about when they see sub 250 gram drones now. So there's we just got one of our, the partners in Coastal Drone picked one up with a Black Friday sale. So we got to play around with one. And there's a DJI Fly app, kind of like DJI Go. And it has a map in there that looks like the no-fly zone one that you might be familiar with. And I put a few screenshots in that blog. And there's, it shows you approach paths and restricted areas. It's kind of interesting. I thought some of the areas that were, that had circles, for example, around here, our office is like smack dab in between Langley's control zone and Pitt Meadows control zone. And only Langley's control zone shows up on the Fly app. So it's like, they're both Class C, they're both like equally busy. So I'm not totally sure why they would be so different, but it does show approach paths and that sort of thing, areas that you should avoid. And that's gonna help you make the right decision when it comes to what sub 250 gram drones are allowed to do, because you still have to follow the applicable Part 9, which is that don't be an idiot rule that says you can't cause a hazard to other airspace users or people on the ground. So staying out of approach paths, staying out of controlled airspace, or at least high density controlled airspace, is going to help you achieve that goal of not being a hazard. And there's other things as well, like I could go on forever. One of the things that I say in that blog is, and that I said to even like when I was a flight instructor talking to students where they're like, what if I do this? Can I do this? Well, what if I want to do this? It's like, if you feel comfortable sitting down with 3 Transport Canada inspectors or 3 RCMP officers across from you and saying, this is why I did what I did, and you're not like getting sweaty thinking about that, you're not freaking out a little bit inside thinking about trying to explain yourself, then it's probably fine. But if you feel like you're kind of grasping at straws trying to make a case for yourself, then maybe make a different decision. Okay, so that was question 6. Question 7. This one got a bunch of attention, and I have to give a shout out to Brian Bentman. He and I had a really good email discussion about this one, and I actually tried to do something different with this question where it had multiple correct answers so that you could select all of the correct options. And but I tried to set it up to not look like it was that way. And then when I brought it over, I'm just really bad at coding, guys. Don't hire me for your coding project. I'm not a soft programmer by any means, and I messed it up. So there was supposed to be 2 correct answers on here. It ended up only marking the first one that I had listed as correct. And that was log the incident and keep the records. And that's what's listed in the CARs. So if you run into an incident, take a look at CAR 901.49, and that lists all of the things that Transport Canada wants you to see, or wants to see you create a record of if that happens on your flight. That doesn't mean that you can't keep a record of other things that happen that you want to investigate and don't want to have happen again. But those are specifically the ones that Transport Canada wants to be able to see if they request incident reports from you. And that might happen not because of anything that you've done wrong, but maybe they're seeing an increased rate of incidents with like a Mavic 2. For whatever reason, there's a bunch of issues that have been cropping up. So then they go in their drone registration database and they're like, well, let's look for Mavic 2 owners and I want to see all of your incident reports. Let's see how widespread this issue is. Is it coming up with everybody? So it may be no fault of your own, but you may get those records requested from TC. So you definitely want to make sure that you have a system in place where you're keeping track of these things. And the way that the rules are currently written, and you can find this referenced in the CARs and in the AIM, you also need to log the incident and provide that report to the Transportation Safety Board. I have it on good authority that that will be changing, but as of right now, if you crash your drone, you have to submit that report, and there's like damage to the propeller. I'll grab the CAR reference and I'll link it from the end of the quiz blog post, along with all this video and all the other stuff that I'm talking about. But there's specific things that are listed that say you have to report to the TSB. Likely what's going to happen is, because their role is to record incidents to prevent recurrence, they want to understand what's happening with the goal of preventing recurrence. They're not trying to lay blame. They will just say, cool, thanks, no further action required, because they probably don't care. They're more interested in incidents that involve aircraft with people on them. I think one of the requirements is that you report if your drone is missing or inaccessible. They don't care that there's a phantom strung up in a tree, but as the rules stand right now, it's an aircraft. Just report it, let them know that it happened. They're gonna be like, all right, great, thanks for letting us know. No further action, don't do anything else. So not the end of the world for you, but something to be aware of. So the correct answers should be log the incident, keep the records, and let TSB know if it's something, one of the items that qualifies for them. I hope that clarifies. And I know there's a few people that marked that one as informed TSB and then got it wrong. So I hereby declare with all the authority vested in me that you now get that question right. So congratulations, you just got 11 out of 10 or a higher mark, 1 mark higher. And the next one was parks. You have an advanced certificate. This one also caused a little bit of drama. You have an advanced certificate and a drone approved for flights near people. So you can fly within 16 feet, 5 meters of people. Can you fly in provincial and national parks? Guess I got this one wrong. So let's talk about it. So the options were, yes, if you stay below 400 feet. Yes, if you take off from outside the park. No, park flying requires additional permission, which is what I had marked as correct. And no, you need an SFOC to fly in parks. I mean, it wasn't totally wrong. Park flying, if you're going to take off from inside the park, then you absolutely require additional permission from the authority of the park. You can't just fly there because you're certified by Transport Canada. There's additional restrictions. You don't need an SFOC to fly in parks. You stay below 400 feet regardless, so that one's kind of there. But this option, yes, if you take off from outside the park, caused a little bit of a stir. So I wanted to bring up a couple of references, which is how, of course, my app just restore or reset. So one sec. Okay, so I was looking at the Parks Canada website, which I realized I should have phrased this question to just apply to national because the provincial rules are a little bit different depending on which province or which territory you're looking at. So let's talk national first. So flying in parks. It says, use the parks at Parks Canada places. Drone flying is a popular hobby, blah, blah, blah. They also pose risk, blah, blah, blah. For these reasons, Parks Canada strictly limits the use of drones. Flying a drone without park or site approval may result in law enforcement action and a fine of up to $25,000. We want to avoid that. So it says, all Parks Canada places are no drone zones for recreational use. Please leave your drone at home. And I called the park and I said, when you say, flying a drone in the park, are you talking about the location of where the operator is, like where the pilot is, or are you talking about where the location of the drone is? And they said, let me talk to my manager. And they put me on hold and I got to listen to some music. And then they came back and said, we're talking about where the drone is. I was like, okay, makes sense. Like, appreciate your time. Thank you for that. This is kind of a shouldn't, not a can't, not a legal thing. It is kind of up for grabs, so I'm gonna say it's not as cut and dry, and that was kind of the point of this whole quiz, was taking a look at some of these questions that have come up that don't necessarily have cut dry, it's this way or it's this way answers. So if you're gonna be taking off from outside the park and you're gonna be flying over the park, there's another, not regulation, but an AIM reference, so the Aeronautical Information Manual, has a bit on national parks, and so it's shoot, I took a really tiny screen grab of it, so I think it was in maybe the Gen section, but if you download the whole thing, it says 1.11.3 National, Provincial, and Municipal Parks, Reserves, and Refuges. To preserve the natural environment of parks, reserves, and refuges, and to minimize the disturbance to the natural habitat, overflight should not be conducted below 2,000 feet AGL. And so that's obviously something that's applicable to manned aircraft pilots. And when you look at what that intent is, they're trying to not cause a disturbance. So if you're being a hazard with your drone, if you are being in people's faces or over picnic areas or taking scenic shots of things that people go to the the parks to visit, that's, I think, what they're, trying not to cause a disturbance, try to minimize that disturbance. So if you're going to take off from outside the park and you're going to overfly the park, I'm not going to say that you should do that. I'm not going to say that you can't do that, but I am going to say minimize the disturbance if that is something that you are looking into. That'll probably keep you in the least hot water if that's something that comes up. But for right now, unless anyone wants to point me to a different resource that we can dive in and look a little bit closer at, that's kind of where that one sits. And then provincially, there's a bunch of, they're pretty consistent with the national rules too, like the parks, the provincial parks, territorial parks look very similar to the national park rules. But there may be some specific differences in areas like Whistler. I've seen them be a little bit more permissive than with other parks. So something to look at. The next question, and so I was going to say, if you got that one wrong as well, I'll give you a pass. You get a freebie on that one too. So I think we should see a few more 100% on this now. The next question is to select a true statement about flying in Class F airspace. So Class F airspace can be divided into 3 subcategories. You have CYAs, CYRs, and CYDs. This one's only talking about, the options only include CYAs and CYRs. So CYA, the A is for advisory, CYR, the R is for restricted, as you probably know. There's kind of a weird thing with Class F airspace, and it's that it kind of absorbs the restriction of the airspace around it. So if it's like a Class A that's surrounded by Class C airspace, then it kind of acts like you need the permissions to operate in that Class A, but that's not consistent. So if you end up in a situation like that, there's only a few of them that I know of off the top of my head. There's one like Grouse Mountain is, I think, surrounded by a Class C for the harbor, or it's very close to. So there's some weird kind of things with Class F airspace, but it's pretty cut and dry with Class A. If you have an advanced certificate, go for it. If your basic certificate and it's Class A, or a CYA, Class F CYAs with a basic certificate, take a look at the surrounding airspace. If it's all restricted everywhere else around you, then maybe not a good idea to fly in that Class A. Try and look at it a bit more detail, or call your FIC, try and get a little bit more information from NAV Canada on that specific one. If it's a CYR, though, you're always going to need permission. Regardless if you're basic or advanced, you're going to need permission to operate in that CYR. And so that comes from the people that are controlling it, that are making it a CYR. So it'd be like the warden of the prison, or the military area that you're trying to work in or fly in. So CYRs are going to need permission. CYAs get a little bit messy, but for something that's like a training area that's surrounded by Class G, then that's fine. You can fly in those. Just be aware that a lot of the things that take place in CYAs bring the aircraft to low altitudes. And for something like flight training or skydiving or gliding, those things will go below 400 feet. And that's totally legal. They're allowed to do that. They're allowed to get below 500 feet for the purposes of flight training. Obviously, gliders have to come down eventually. Same thing with hang gliders and parachutes. So if it's a CYA for those reasons, then pay extra close attention. Probably want to have a radio in those scenarios so that you can do a broadcast call, let people know where you are and what you're up to. You might get some looky-loos when that happens, but at least use it to gain understanding of what's happening around you and build your situational awareness with what's going on in the sky too, because then you might hear them release the meat bombs, the parachuters, and that way you can stay on the ground until you see that all the chutes are out of the sky. Something like that. I did have something else I was going to say about that, but I can't remember right now. The next question, initially I'd made this a 10-question quiz and then kind of threw on a bonus one at the end. This one was about airports. An airport can be located in uncontrolled airspace, true or false? And that is true. You can have airports in uncontrolled airspace. Around here, Chilliwack is an example. It's in Class G, but it is the Chilliwack Airport. It is a certified airport. And this creates kind of a wonky environment for someone looking at it, trying to understand it with a basic certificate. Because if you think about the basic environment, kind of the operational areas that you're allowed to fly in with a basic certificate, you have to be 100 feet away from people, you have to be outside of controlled airspace, and you have to be 3 nautical miles away from airports and 1 nautical mile away from heliports. So that's where that rule was important, as well as the controlled airspace one, because you can have airports that aren't in controlled airspace, so the radius is going to be, like, you need that buffer radius for the basic category pilots, and that's why that was structured that way. So that plays into the next one. If an airport is in uncontrolled airspace, you can fly nearby with a basic certification as long as you avoid approach and departure paths. That is false, because you would still, I guess, depending on what you consider nearby, but 3 nautical miles away is where you would have to be. You can't fly next door or somewhere that isn't on the approach or departure end, because you need to stay that 3 nautical miles away with your basic certification. So that is the answer to those questions. And I think this was kind of fun. It was fun for me to make. I really appreciated the people that took the time to discuss the answers with me, particularly with the parks and the incident responding question, because it got a lot of really good conversations happening, and it was educational for all. And so if you have any other comments, you can feel free to throw that into the questions here or the comment section, and I'll try and answer some of those. Also, if you have ideas for future questions, if I was looking at doing another quiz of 10 questions or so, what are some areas that maybe you hear people saying something, you're like, that doesn't sound quite right, I don't think that's quite how it's supposed to be. Or if you have some stuff that you're just not super sure on yourself and feel like admitting, you can also just send me an email, kate@coastaldrone.co. But let me know what you want to know. And if I don't know the answer, I'll try and find it out and put that into the quiz, and we can go from there with version 2. But if you don't have any questions, then I'll sign off there. I'll say happy holidays from Santa, Inspire, and me. And I hope everyone has a safe and flyable holiday season. And we're going to have a pretty cool promotion starting on the 16th. So make sure that you're following our page. Also will be helpful if you're following our YouTube channel. So keep an eye out. We've got some good things happening, so that and it'll run till after Christmas, so that if you get some money under the tree instead of a drone, then you can take advantage of it after the holidays are over too. So if there's no questions, I'll wrap that up now. You can always get a hold of me at kate@coastaldrone.co, or if you go to our learning management system, if you're in any of the courses, there's a little chat window in the bottom corner. You can click on that, and that goes right to my phone, so I can get back to you on there as soon as I see it. But I think that's it. So let me know what you want for version 2. Have a good Christmas, good holidays, and we'll see you next time.